Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here. Join me for another scrapbook project where I share some inspiring ways to make the most of your pattern paper and provide tips for using up those extra embellishments you have on hand. On my desk I have this amazing collection of pattern papers from Hip Kit Club. The main kit is packed with florals, geometrics, and scenic prints. These colors are perfect for recording your spring and summer memories. The main kit comes with a rather large collection of embellishments. Included with this collection of pattern papers is a set of cardstock stickers with glitter accents, glitter foam alphas, cardstock die cuts, wood buttons, bows, and floral clothespins, and a collection of acrylic shapes with adorable little flowers and butterflies, and the phrase simple things. Today, I'm going to share some fun ways to use the items in this collection. If you would like a list of the items I'm using today, I have provided you with links in the description below. When I'm working with pattern papers, I try to choose 2 to 3 colors to start with. This pattern here has 3 colors, so I'm going to use those for my page. Now, I could use this as is, but I feel like all of these stripes might become overwhelming. So I'm going to divide these patterns and break them up with some white space. Breaking up patterns is a great way to use the prints in your collection. You don't always have to use them in their entirety. You can use a portion of a pattern, trim down a larger piece and frame it, or divide it up like I'm doing here. I have trimmed the stripes from that daydream pattern, and I'm going to lessen the width of the pattern to about 3¼ inches. This will allow me to have plenty of white space or negative space on my page for the eye to rest. At the top of each of these, I'm going to place a 2-inch photo that I cut to look like a Polaroid. These are going to be backed with cardstock that matches the paper pattern strips. The page is going to be framed with the darker Life in Full Color pattern. This deep blue is going to bring focus back to the photos. Before I adhere everything in place, I want to show you a creative way to add texture to pattern paper and show you how to use up some of the embellishments in this Hip Kit collection. I'm going to wrap some embroidery thread around each of these pattern paper strips. I have already separated the floss into 3 strands, and I'm going to run it through some thread wax so that it doesn't unravel or fray as I wrap it around the paper. I'm going to start by securing this at the top of the pattern paper with some clear tape, and then I'll start wrapping it loosely around my paper strip. Be careful not to wrap too tightly or the paper will curl. As you can see, I occasionally stop and secure the thread with more tape and check to make sure that it's not wound too tightly. You can also add some strips of double-sided tape on the back edges of your paper. The double-sided tape will secure the thread and help maintain the tension as you wrap it around. Now that the top of this pattern paper is finished, I'm going to adhere this photo in place right in the center. I have popped it up on some foam tape because I'll be tucking some flowers under it later on. This is where you get to decide on some embellishments for your page. I'm selecting some yellow elements to match the pattern paper. With so many different elements on this layout, I don't want to overwhelm the design. So it's going to be better for me to stick to a more monochromatic scheme. I have a mix of die cuts, stickers, wood buttons, and acrylics selected, and I'm going to place these randomly on my paper strip. Now I want a few of these to look like they're hanging from the twine. So I'm going to add a hole with this punch here, then I'll thread the floss through. I discovered that it was much easier to adhere the die cut in place first, then use a needle to thread the floss through the hole. I'm going to wrap a little more of this thread around the paper, then I'll adhere this acrylic flower in place with some liquid adhesive. As the glue sets, I'll decide on the placement for the other pieces. The flower and the phrase will have some holes punched in them so that I can thread the floss through. I wanted to hang this little tassel too, but it was too small for the hole punch. So I'm just going to use a piercing tool instead. All of the items here are from one kit, but you could recreate this look with just about any collection of embellishments you have lying around. We all have those leftovers from previous kits, and this is a simple way to use them up. My only suggestion would be to vary the size, shape, and patterns as you add those embellishments to your design. When I was selecting these, I chose a few larger pieces like the flower and butterfly, and some smaller elements like the flowers and the tassel. I also left plenty of space and scattered them in a way that led the eye down the page. I'm going to finish this up with some wooden buttons and acrylic pieces. And now that you have an idea of how these are put together, I'm just going to share a few tips for how I created balance on the other two paper strips. As you can see, I've already added quite a few pieces to the pink paper strip. I selected items that were similar in shape to the elements I placed on the yellow pattern. Since this piece is going to sit opposite of the yellow strip, I placed that pink butterfly on the opposite corner. And I laid the acrylics in a triangular formation so that they created balance on my page. On the blue strip, I'm going to add my title. Now, this would be difficult to read if I had placed thread behind it, so I left that area blank. I also laid all three paper strips together as I was designing this so that I could balance out the larger items and form visual triangles with like shapes. All right, now that these are complete, I'm going to adhere them to my white cardstock. To help with this process, I'm using a centering ruler. This is just being held in place with some magnets. My glass board is magnetic and it really comes in handy when I need an extra hand to secure something in place. I'm placing these strips about 1/4 inch apart so that I have plenty of white space around each one. Now remember, this pattern was a continuous 12 by 12 print with no spaces between the colorful stripes. Take a look at how much different this looks with these smaller paper strips, a white background, and a bold frame. This is such a simple way to use a paper pattern you probably already have in your collection. At the base of each paper strip, I'm going to add some scallop pieces. These are cut from the same cardstock colors as the photo frames. You can use a die cut or a cut file to create the borders. I used one of Hip Kit's cut files to cut mine, and then I trimmed them down to the width of the paper strip. As I finish adhering these in place, I would love it if you took a moment to tap the subscribe button, thumbs up icon, or leave a comment below. Your comments are always welcome, and I truly enjoy reading how a project inspired you. To finish off the page, I'm adding some florals at the top. These were fussy cut from a pattern paper in the collection. Sometimes a pattern paper has some amazing floral prints that I just love, but I often struggle using busy florals on my layouts. Often I'll cut them apart or I'll cut them into smaller chunks and use them on a page, or do what I did here and cut them apart to use as accents or embellishments. This is just another simple way to use those prints that you have in your collection. I'm going to finish adding these to my layout and then I'll share the completed page with you. Here is the completed scrapbook layout. Within those flowers, I added a little phrase. I decided to change this to the word memories because this was a better match to the flowers, and I like that little bit of glitter around the frame. The pink, yellow, and blue flowers do such a lovely job of framing these photos and make them the focus of the page within all of these lovely little embellishments. This is such a fun way to use up little items like these buttons and acrylic shapes, and they add such a whimsical feel to a page. Most of the items I used today were part of the May main kit from Hip Kit Club. If you're a member of the Hip Kit Club, you save $5 on the monthly kit and 15% on coordinating items which ship free with your main kit. If you'd like to learn more about the Hip Kit Club, I've added details in the description below. I want to thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions about this project or the supplies I used, feel free to leave those in the comments below. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.